What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield holding it down for us in the Boston DraftKings headquarters. We are brought to you by Wrangler, made for the ride of life. Save 15% on your first Wrangler.com order with promo code GOJO15. Got a great show coming up for you today. As always, download, subscribe, rate, review. Check us out on DraftKings YouTube channel, DraftKingsNetwork.com, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, and a host of other places live 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. Or catch us after the fact on all those same places. We got Allen Robinson, wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, going to join us today, talk about his quarterback, Mike Tomlin finding ways to win. We've also got Bryan Bresee, rookie defensive tackle star for the New Orleans Saints, former Clemson product, here to tell us about an important initiative with the NFL. But man, Dad, last night there was a lot of F around and find out going on in the world of Major League Baseball. Good Lord.
I mean, incredible. We're looking at, we still have one more 100-win team in this thing that can be eliminated. I mean, we've already had Baltimore swept their 100-win team, the Dodgers swept out by the Diamondbacks, and now Atlanta one game away from being knocked out of this by the Phillies with a little bit of back and forth going on in that series we'll get to, but wow. I mean, these, and all of a sudden the talk comes in about, do you change the format a little bit because these top teams are getting knocked off in the playoffs? I mean, what are you going to do? Let them play all the games at home? They're losing them at home now as well. So I'm not sure. I'd like to hear what some of the thought process is of that. But the Dodgers, I mean, holy smokes, 3 years in a row playing against teams that have huge double-digit, wins, more wins than during the regular season, and getting knocked out. Just another disappointment for them. The Diamondbacks, 4 home runs in the third inning in that game. The Phillies, 6 home runs overall. It's been a bomb show, and it's been none of the favorites outside of Houston getting to where they needed to be.
Yeah, water is wet and always finds its level. The Houston Astros now in their 7th straight ALCS. Their permanent residency continues on that side of baseball. But let's start with a little bit of tea, because this Philadelphia series against the Atlanta Braves, it had everything. And last night, coming off some funky base running in the game prior, the end of the game for Bryce Harper and the Phillies, we had all day kind of rumored this idea that Orlando Arcia had gone into the clubhouse and been talking some flack about Bryce Harper and the base running in the way anybody would behind closed doors in a locker room after a game like this. I want to make it abundantly clear. I don't think what Orlando Arcia did was wrong, but timing is everything. And apparently this happened when there was somebody from the media still in the locker room. And so this report started to make its way outside of the locker room. And what you got as the end result was the picture that will be framed in the basement of Philly sports fans everywhere if this series goes along the way it was, and this season goes along the way Phillies fans hope that it might, with another World Series win here. You're going to have that picture of Bryce Harper staring down Orlando Arcia framed in every household in Philadelphia. Here were the two parties in both of this talking about and responding to exactly what went down here. Bryce Harper on one of his 2 home runs, staring down Orlando Arcia as he rounded second base after the bleep talking transpired.
No, just because, I mean, when you win the clubhouse, I just under the impression that you could say whatever you wanted. I guess it's just something that was reported,
I mean, anytime anybody says something, right? I mean, that's what it's all about.
Did you enjoy staring him down?
Yeah, I mean, I stared right at him.
I mean, there was no denying it, Dad. And this is what you say all the time. I don't think the Phillies played any harder or wanted to win this game anymore, but in those little moments right there, Bryce Harper's always looking for an edge. This guy is every movie athlete personified, right? He almost ruins other players for you, because we talk all the time. It's not just about what you do in the postseason. It's not just about what you do in clutch moments. But Bryce Harper seems to always have a knack for that. And so giving that guy who lives with a perennial chip on his shoulder another little bit of dip to put on, it does not seem advisable.
I mean, whatever fuels you, right? Whatever fuels you. Yeah. But like we said, this was extremely innocuous. He literally was like, ha ha, attaboy Harper. Like, that's what it was.
I mean, so listen, for Harper, the guy's been, a star and on the cover of everything since his teens. Now has 10 career home runs and NLDSs, tops in baseball history. So the guy knows how to hit a bomb. But the storyline here, for those who don't know, in the previous game, Phillies were up 4-0. They ended up losing 5-4, and the last out of the game was a fly ball, and Harper took off from first, and he rounded second, and it was caught, and he got doubled up back at first base. So a running error by him, a running blunder by him. And Arcia said in the locker room after, attaboy Harper, a couple of times. So first and foremost, do I think that's what helped, Harper hit 2 home runs? No. Bryce Harper is one of the most intense players there is anyway. I don't think he needs the extra motivation to hit a home run or two. As I just said, he's done it the most times in an NLDS. So I'm sure each time it wasn't, brought on by someone saying something. But when you do perform after somebody said something, you get the right to stare him down. You get the right to do those kind of things if you want to. And he got to do it not once, but twice. As far as the locker room is concerned, you're right. I mean, the comment, attaboy Harper, making a blunder like that. I mean, my God, much worse has been said in a locker room without a doubt. And I even heard, their manager say, I thought, it's going to make guys not want to talk to the media anymore, or, don't push this on the media. All right, please don't do that. If there's media in the room, then they're going to report things that they hear. That's just the bottom line. So that's going to happen. If you didn't know any more media was in the room, okay, so if that's a mistake on your part, whatever, or you feel you can say anything you want in the locker room and that's sacred, that unfortunately is not true if there are media members in the locker room. So
yeah, that seemed to be an pretty easy line of thinking to fall, unless this person was hiding in a closet like they're in a spy movie. If they're in the locker room, they're going to do their job while they're in the locker room here. That's an awareness crime, not necessarily a crime in this case of being out of pocket all the way with what you said.
And again, attaboy Harper, I mean, that's not ones where I'm going, boy, those are fighting words. I mean, Harper made a mistake. I mean, he made a base running error, okay? I mean, and basically, Arcia said something about it. I'm sure there was much worse said probably without the media around about that. Believe me, much worse said. So it added to the storyline. Do I think it had anything to do with his 2 home runs? No, not one bit. Not a bit. I mean, the bigger storyline is, Atlanta being in trouble here. A team where we thought was going to walk to the World Series is now on the precipice of getting knocked out. The third 100-win team this year that would get knocked out of the postseason. That, to me, is the storyline. This is fun to talk about, and it's Philly, so it's a tough town, and it's Bryce Harper, who's a tough player. So whenever you get any kind of, one-on-ones, or as we see stare downs here, it's a cool thing. All right, it adds to the hype a little bit.
It's great for baseball. They're so lucky that this leaked out, because this has added juice and personality in the sport that we've talked about. It's done a better job coming out over the last number of years with a lot of these younger players. But to get it, it's kind of like we always talk about. You're not guaranteed to have your best player up at bat in the biggest moment of any of these games. You're not guaranteed to have drama like this in the postseason when everybody's watching your product. And instead, that's exactly what baseball got. This is a huge win for them.
It's a huge win for them because the game was a blowout. I mean, there was no drama in this game. I mean, as I said, 6 home runs. He hits 2. Castellano hits 2. They have 2 other home runs. I mean, it's a 10-2 blowout. So I'm glad we had that, to kind of hold on to and say, is this going to lead to anything? No, it's not going to lead to anything. It's not going to lead to anybody getting thrown at, in the next game, because you don't do that in the postseason. Just like playoff hockey, you're not getting in those fights and getting, into the penalty box and that kind of thing. So that's not going to, it was just a little added flavor that to me did nothing to the game as far as Bryce Harper hitting 2 home runs because that was said, but it added a nice kind of flavor to the game, as well as coming into the game, both he and Castellano wore Colorado shirts. Basically,
they had Deion Sanders shirts. So Bryce Harper had the actual Deion Sanders prime shirt there. Nick Castellanos had the Colorado Buffaloes white hoodie on there. both of them at that point, we should have known we're going to do bad things to baseball. I think the far more effective force in this game, because you're right, Bryce Harper's always walking around looking for an edge. He's always going to live like this. For Nick Castellanos, who a drive to deep left center has become a meme with him, going all the way back to the home run he hit during that Reds game. What you had here was, once again, if you're going to try and tell a human interest story in the middle of this baseball game, Nick Castellanos is going to hit a home run during it. And that's exactly what happened for his second bomb last night, as the Phillies take a 2-1 lead in this series, which is incredible. So a lot of compelling juice to that one. Bryce Harper now also, by the way, the all-time leader in home runs in the divisional series round with 10 in his career. Really impressive stuff. The guy shows up when the lights are brightest. He really is, again, he's like a movie athlete in the way that he conducts himself. So we got that series there. We got the Astros defeating the Twins to move on to the ALCS. And then the Dodgers getting swept by the Diamondbacks. It's just the first time the Dodgers have been swept in the playoffs since 2006. And for the Diamondbacks, man, our guy Eric Burns called it. We had him on the other day, MLB analyst, who had this to say about Corbin Carroll, who has been part of this young star turn for a Diamondbacks team that went out here and walloped baseballs.
They have one of the best young players that I've seen in a long time in Corbin Carroll. I think the fact that he's 5'0" makes him even that much more entertaining. There's a thing, guys, that we used to reference all the time. It's called tension-free barrel release. And when you watch somebody hit, it's like they're short to it, and then they get here, and then it just goes, and they hit these balls that you think are gonna, maybe they might just like sneak over the fence, and it ends up going 450 feet. That's Corbin Carroll. And he hits these balls, you're like, oh, I think he hit that pretty well, and then it's 440, 450 feet. You're like, dude, how is this little guy doing it?
How is this little guy and the rest of the team doing it now? Because, Dad, according to ESPN stats and info last night, the Diamondbacks are now the third team in postseason history with 4 players 23 or younger to home run in a single postseason. That group including the young star Corbin Carroll. So they went out there, and I forget if it was the third or fourth inning. Absolute third inning. Just annihilated baseballs, even having one ruled foul after a video review on the field by the umpires, only to have the subsequent pitch absolutely striped out of the ballpark. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before.
Yeah, poor Lance Lynn. He was on the receiving end of all 4 of those home runs in the third. So kudos to the Diamondbacks. As I said, the sweep there. But again, for the Dodgers, 3rd year in a row getting ousted by a team that had double-digit more wins in the regular season, which I said again in the beginning is bringing up people talking about, do you change the format? Because we do have the possibility of the 3 100-plus teams all being out of the playoffs going into the champion, not even making the CSs this year, which would be absolutely amazing. We're waiting as obviously as we talked about the Astros making it for the 7th straight year to the CS, which is so interesting because now we have to wait and see, because Max Scherzer threw a simulated game yesterday, I believe. You had both those pitchers, Verlander and Scherzer, on the Mets. Then they both get traded away. Now they both could possibly square off in the ALCS. Verlander with Houston and Scherzer with Texas. We'll have to wait. Scherzer hasn't thrown since, I think, September 12th with an arm issue, but he's positive that he's going to get back and be used somehow, some way. So that would be, Met fans have to be sick at this.
I mean, I wonder if this even registers on the pain scale for Mets fans who are so used to the worst possible thing happening at any given time. They might actually be happy that a couple of people got out. And the Mets fans are never happy.
I was going to say they're not happy.
That's an impossibility there. Shifting the postseason schedule around is interesting, Dad. I saw Jared Carabas, our buddy over at Baseball's Dead, tweeting saying he wants the single game. The one thing he did say that I absolutely agree with, because it's tough, right? Baseball's always going to be difficult to wrap your arms around with the postseason because it's the volume sport. 162 regular season games. You're almost never going to get the best team through the course of 162 to actually win the championship because you can get hot. The math is so large and mathy that you can get these streaks of when a team is at its best. And if that timing doesn't work out right, unfortunately, you're up Bleeps Creek. You get Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts going 1 for 21 in a playoff series and you getting sent home. But the one thing I do agree with Jared, I want the single game wild card back. I think that was so much fun. I know it's the complete antithesis of this argument for more games in a volume sport, but there's just something I loved about my younger brother, Jake, who always argues in basketball that overtime should be sudden death. It's the closest we get to that sense of urgency when you've got teams that have gone out for so many games during the season, forced to play for one game for all the marbles in the wild card round. I want that back. If it gives you more games in these subsequent rounds, so be it. But I do miss the single game wild card. I will admit that.
Yeah, you get that if you have a tie before the postseason starts, you play that one game. And it is interesting in a series sport like hockey, like basketball, baseball, is that one game to decide something it seems exciting, but it seems unfair, doesn't it? Because don't you say in a series sport, usually the better team ends up showing that they're the better team and they win? Well, obviously we're not seeing it here, and we haven't seen it, especially with the Dodgers in the last couple of years. But going to one game, man, I mean, well, I know that's what we get in football all the time, and it could be that game where all of a sudden nothing goes right? If you could be the better team and nothing goes right, next thing you know, you're out and going home. So I'm kind of wishy-washy on it. I love the excitement of it. It's kind of like the penalty kicks in soccer. I don't love it because I'd like the game to decide it, the game of soccer. But penalty kicks are exciting to watch.
Right. It's objectively the most interesting thing that you get to do with that. Penalty kicks and that, shootouts in hockey. It's all such awesome theater. And I do think part of this is still an entertainment product because, again, I think we're admitting up front this sport is a really difficult time finding the truest champion because overall sample size is so huge. It's so tough to kind of get your arms all the way around that. But, man, exciting day of baseball. Dad, maybe only topped by one thing yesterday in the world of sports or sports-related items. How about our bud Katie Nolan?
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, going out there, Katie Nolan, who we had on as guest and a friend of the show yesterday, on Celebrity Jeopardy last night, absolutely walloping the competition, finding her way to the semifinals of Celebrity Jeopardy. Dad, before, or I should say in spite of, some very, very bad math going into Final Jeopardy. I was sick. Katie stormed out to an unbelievable lead. They do Triple Jeopardy and Celebrity Jeopardy. And Dad, at the ending here, you've got Final Jeopardy. We get to wager an amount on that final clue. And Katie wagered the wrong amount. She did the math wrong necessary to win. She was up a substantial dollar amount. And so we got this situation here playing out in front of us.
Now, Katie Nolan had that big lead. Did she have Remember the Alamo?
I did.
She did. Now, math, not your favorite part of the game.
I made a mistake.
You just had to wager more than 3,500.
Right.
And you're a champion.
And I wagered 3,500.
You wagered exactly 3,500.
I'm a moron!
Oh, my God!
Christopher and Katie are exactly tied. And we're going to be going to a tiebreaker clue. French history. And here's the clue. Drink up. A famous New Orleans street is named after this dynasty that ruled France for most of the 17th and 18th centuries. Katie.
What is bourbon?
It is bourbon!
What a moment for the kids. So again, it was Christopher Maloney, Sherry Shepard, and Katie that were on the episode together. It got down to that point. Katie wagered the wrong dollar amount as it was really her and Christopher Maloney. Sherry Shepard had a rough night.
Sherry Shepard had a real rough night. She was funny, but she had a rough night.
She was thoroughly outclassed by the other two. Maloney makes a big run back during the triple Jeopardy round, and then they go to sudden death Jeopardy, and Bourbon Street, of all places, saves Katie Nolan and allows her to move. She was by far the best of that bunch there, clearly a student of the game, and glad it worked out for her.
It's interesting. She goes to the semis. It's going to be real because she's really, really good.
Yes.
I mean, and when she was on, told us how much she studied and everything. I will say there were 4 sports questions, and she didn't get one of them. She was beat to the buzzer by the other two on all 4 of them. But her personality was fantastic on the show. She deserved to win, even though she almost blew it at the end.
Yeah, she got out to her lead at the beginning. Triple Jeopardy was the one that got Chris back in it. So I'm going to prorate for our girl, Katie. Congratulations to Celebrity Jeopardy finalist Katie Nolan. Coming up next, let's talk about teams on the ropes in the NFL, 1-4 heading into the weekend next.
Bill, you said you guys need to start over. Have you ever had to do that before?
Yeah, I've done it before.
What does that entail, starting over?
Starting over.
I've never seen it this bleak.
It's hard, right? We don't want to score 0 points. That's not the goal.
Today, Mac Jones looked untalented.
Bill Belichick has failed this offense for more than a decade.
You can't really fire Bill Belichick because of how much he's done for the Patriots. He's done a lot, but eventually, that leash has to run out.
No more leash. It's not working anymore, Bill.
How concerned are you that your message isn't getting through to the players?
We'll keep working on it.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Man, Bill Belichick has never gotten criticism like this before. Guys, Patriots are 1-4. Mac Jones has been struggling, repeatedly being benched in favor of Bailey Zappi. And yet, so we saw Bill saying we need to start over. When asked if Mac Jones is the starter, Belichick said, yeah, we're not making any changes. So guys, like I said, we literally saw the video. He said on Sunday, we need to start over. Now they asked him, what does starting over entail? And he said, starting over. So he didn't really tell us what that meant. No. So I guess he can decide whatever he wants. Yet he's sticking with Mac, which has a lot of people scratching their heads here. We started this conversation yesterday about like 1-4 teams. You know, we talked about the Vikings a little bit. Do any of these teams have a chance of turning things around? For the Patriots, it seems like they'll have to actually make some changes to turn things around.
Yeah, it's interesting. Starting over, I guess, doesn't mean changing things. You're actually just going back and starting over with Mac Jones still as your quarterback again for that team. But, Dad, you look out into the group of 1-4 teams in the NFL that the Patriots are involved in. We'll put the Broncos off to the side. We're going to get to them when we look ahead at Thursday Night Football coming up tonight with their division game against the Chiefs. But you've got the Patriots, who this week are at the Las Vegas Raiders. The Giants at 1-4 at the Buffalo Bills on Sunday Night Football. The Bears home versus the Minnesota Vikings in the division. And the Cardinals at the Los Angeles Rams, another division game in this week. And the Vikings, as we mentioned, going up against the Bears there. Dad, looking at this group, there's not a lot. It is pretty bleak for everyone that we just mentioned there for a variety of reasons. There any team in that bunch that you actually think, besides the Bears or the Vikings, where one of them is going to have to win that game, that actually has a chance to turn things around here?
Turn things around? No. I mean, I know we talk about in the beginning of the season based on preseason and not the practices are different, that you're a different team come middle of the season as you are in the beginning of the season. But I don't see any of these teams going on this run, all of a sudden, a second half run. The biggest thing to me on the teams we're talking about is where are you with your quarterback? Because turning this season around, I think, is going to be difficult. So what's the answer going forward? And for the Patriots, you know, we sit there and talk about changes or starting over. What the hell are you going to do? I mean, this is your roster. You think you're pulling someone off the street that's going to change your fortunes? It's not. So the starting over part, I don't really understand. The changes part, the only thing you can do is put some backups in and bench some guys, and they're backups for a reason. They're supposedly not as good as the other guys, but maybe someone steps up and does something. But it's not going to turn a season around. So to me, the way I look at with these one-win teams is, where are you with your quarterback? So how are you building? So the Patriots don't have their quarterback on their roster. Of where they're going to get to, it's going to be someone different. It's not going to be Mac Jones. It's not going to be Bailey Zappi. All right? Giants have their quarterback, Daniel Jones. They paid him. He's going to be the guy. They're not changing that. The Vikings know they're going to have a different quarterback, right? You're sitting there, we're talking about trading Kirk Cousins, which I don't know if that's going to happen. But regardless, I doubt he's going to be there next year. So they're going to have a new quarterback. Cardinals are probably going to have a new quarterback, even though they paid Kyler Murray all that money. It doesn't look like that's going to be the marriage going forward. We haven't even seen him on the field yet. Don't know when we'll see him on the field. And for the Bears, I think the jury is still out. They had that big game right against the Commanders. Does that carry over now playing the Vikings? I do think the jury is still out on him. I think you're set with the Giants. Jury's out on Fields. You're going to get a new quarterback in Arizona and Minnesota and the Patriots. So that's kind of what I look at. And it's tough to say, and even as a former player, with so many games left to say your season is done. But I've been in that position a couple of times when the season is over early, mostly when I was in Houston. And it is difficult. But then you now in the position I'm at, you look at, okay, where do you build? Well, the first place you start everything is a quarterback. So for those teams that are going to need a quarterback, you get that quarterback and you start to build around that quarterback while he's on his quarterback contract.
So I think looking at everyone's situation, honestly, the team that I think should be most hopeful about what comes next is probably the Minnesota Vikings, because you've got Justin Jefferson, who's a top 3 player regardless of position in the NFL, probably at this current juncture. So you've got that to build and hang your head around, because for the Patriots, the problems are more existential. You're not really sure what you are on offense right now. You haven't leaned into one specific identity. You thought you were going to get back to competent quarterback play here, but you don't really have the dogs to run. So that's kind of a much more loaded bag here. Honestly, is it weird that the team I actually feel most hopeful for already because of what we've seen is the Arizona Cardinals? Like, in a set of circumstances where they are not supposed to succeed, they've gone out here and found a way to lay the ground strong for Jonathan Gannon. And Dad, it should give you more reason as a franchise to allow him and allow this new regime to make the decision about Kyler Murray that they want to make. If they think they need to move on, kind of like you did for Cliff Kingsbury with Kyler Murray, when it was Josh Rosen there, and gave him the opportunity to go and set the clock on his own terms with his own quarterback, Jonathan Gannon and company are proving they're probably worth that same investment because of what they've already meant in setting the foundation for a winning culture going forward. I talked about this with Dominique Foxworth the other day. It's very difficult, this notion of openly tanking, trying to subvert your team's season, because often it makes it difficult for the coach's message to get to the locker room when you're trying to preach accountability, toughness, being all in on this. And clearly the message being sent by the organization elsewhere runs counter to that. Even with the Cardinals here, one thing's for sure, if you're a player on that team right now, you can trust what the coach is selling you because you've been a tough out in all these games. It gives me really early Dan Campbell vibes from his time at the Lions where, man, they weren't winning a ton of games, but you saw the fight. You saw those things. Houston's kind of the same right now.
Yeah, I'm with you on Arizona. They have been, it's been surprising. 4-point loss, 3-point loss. They got beat pretty good by the 49ers, but who doesn't? And the Bengals just beat them by a couple of touchdowns. And they had the win over the Cowboys. So I agree with you. So what happens at the quarterback position? That's going to be the interesting part there. But if the players are buying what he's selling, let's see how the rest of the season goes. I'm with you there. The intriguing one to me is going to be Chicago because they hold 1 and 2 picks in the draft, right? And so you have that currency. You have a quarterback, which I think right now people are leaning on, you're going to move away from, but I think he still has time to show his wares and say he's still worth keeping. But they did it last year. We thought trade him away and get, Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, get one of those guys. They didn't do it and stuck with him. And it hasn't worked out, certainly from a record standpoint. And at times he's looked really good, but at times he hasn't. And we talk about maybe the Luke Getsy and he aren't connected well from OC to quarterback. So that to me is the most intriguing one going forward with the currency they have with draft picks.
Yeah, that always is a good out for you there. And listen, the questions you might still have around quarterback, right? You at the very least have some answers at receiver because so much of the last game and a half success on offense has been tied back to DJ Moore, who you brought over in that trade for the #1 overall pick. He's looked sensational. He was the guy in the last game where credit to Justin Fields for making the throws, but it was DJ Moore bullying a 155-pound rookie cornerback and creating space and creating yards after the catch that ultimately got it for you there. So again, we talked about with Justin Jefferson, you've got a weapon to also help with if it's Justin Fields and you're able to continue to developing this thing or whoever you bring in next there.
Yeah, I agree. And listen, they were getting some good running from Khalil Herbert. Now he's nicked up. He was averaging over 5 yards a carry. So I did like some of the things they did in the offseason. Cole Kmet has been having himself a year with 3 touchdowns already. So I kind of liked where they were building. I think the lines, need some help as well. That's why I do think that's the intriguing one to me, because they started getting some weapons there. Do you change the trigger man? Or do you, and I guess that's what the rest of the season is going to be. Let's see how they develop together. Let's see, because all of a sudden it was Matt Eberflus. There's issues there. What happens?
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. It's Thursday, and you know what that means. Kick off your NFL weekend with Thursday Night Football on Prime. It is on, everybody. So we got the Broncos visiting the Chiefs, Kansas City, looking to continue their winning ways. They've gotten the W in 15 straight against Denver, but they've been close the past few guys. 4 of the last 5 games in the series have been decided by 6 points or fewer. And for all the Swifties, GoJo, hoping for another Taylor Swift-dominated broadcast, don't hold your breath. Travis Kelce is questionable with an ankle injury, so don't expect to be seeing her in the stands. But even with, Kelce's status up in the air here, Chiefs are big-time favorites. So what do the Broncos need to focus on to give themselves a fighting chance here? Andrew Whitworth broke it down for the guys yesterday.
It's not real good, look good for the Broncos. But I think it's one of those things with them right now. Let's be honest, it's less about trying to win a game and it's more about showing really who they are as a football team. How do they get better? Because right now, I think that the simplest way for them to go into this game is we've got to show a physical presence and attitude on defense that separates what we've done the first 5 weeks. We've got on the offensive side of the football, we got to take care of the football. We got to play physical on that side. We got to convert in these situations in the red zone, play up to our standards, and let the game take care of itself.
Yeah, so guys, Kelce's ankle, he seemed to be moving around pretty well on it at practice, but he is listed as questionable.
And Dad, in an ideal world, if you're the Chiefs, while every player is going to try and work hard out there to play, if there was a short week, if there ever was, to rest your star tight end, knowing the majority of the season's far more important, even with this being a division game, it is against the Denver Broncos defense that is dead last against the run in the NFL, got 177 yards hung on him by Breece Hall last week. This feels like the opportune time to sit him down and say, hey, go check out Taylor Swift's new movie premiere from the Eras Tour, kick your feet up in the theater there, get some popcorn and enjoy the time off.
I would agree. From a player standpoint, I'm sure what he is saying is let me play in this game, then I have 10 days before the next game. I have time to heal up more. But from Andy Reid's side of it, that would seem to be the move to make, is to sit him in this one, give him all that extra time as well. And that's probably why we're not going to see Taylor Swift, too. You just mentioned it. She's out at her premieres, right? Finding another revenue stream, and her now on the big screen with her tour, just finding another way to make another.
Boy, some hot takes, by the way, about the songs that hit the cutting room floor that didn't make it into the movie. Swifties were mad online.
Oh, I know. I was one of them, man. I was all over Twitter, or X, or whatever you call it, talking about that. I don't know what the hell you're talking about, quite honestly, but okay, some people were mad.
Long Live didn't make it in there.
Are you serious? I mean, how is that even possible?
How do they cut the Archer? That's my question.
Live,
I mean,
the Archer.
I mean,
that's what I was kind of cheering. Archer, and
Senior,
no Archer.
Didn't your entire family go to the Taylor Swift concert and you babysat Jackson?
So myself and my son-in-law, Ben, Sydney's husband, Ben, stayed back in Arizona while everybody else in the family went to Vegas to watch Taylor Swift. And they all had a great time. And Ben and I said, no, thanks. I like her. Don't get me wrong. I think she's incredibly talented, like her, but I probably not enough to go sit through 3.5 hours of it. And somebody had to watch young Jackson, and it was a chance for Granddad to watch him, and Ben, the about to be a father for the first time, get a little practice in. So we did our thing there. We'll go catch the movie. We'll go eat our popcorn in the movie theater and get the same thing.
Perfect.
So you can get the whole experience out of that, as can Travis Kelce. And Dad, that'd be great news for the Broncos if the most porous part of their defense weren't up front. Usually with the Chiefs offense, the formula in the Mahomes-Kelce era has always been, hey, if you can get your hands on Travis Kelce near the line of scrimmage, disrupt the timing there with Patrick Mahomes sure as target, then you have a chance to knock the offense off kilter a little bit. We saw the only loss for the Chiefs so far this season was the game that Travis Kelce missed at home to start the year against the Detroit Lions. A much more potent offense on the other side, a much better defense on the other side than anything the Broncos are going to provide. But the offense certainly looks different without Travis Kelce, even in a year where they've spread the love, Dad. We know he's got to be the foundation for this. So does that worry you at all, at least in terms of the spread? According to DK Sportsbook, the Chiefs 11-point favorites right now. Do you think any of this can hang close? The Chiefs haven't really been a good team against the spread for the last couple of years.
No, they haven't. I could see some issues because, listen, Denver's offense hasn't been awful, right?
No.
I mean, Russell Wilson, I think 11 touchdowns, just 2 interceptions, completing about 67% of his passes. He's been sacked 15 times, but it's the defensive side of the ball that's been pretty bad for Denver at this point. So, they're last in the league. They're giving up the most yards against an unbelievably potent offense, who, by the way, as Patrick Mahomes says, doesn't think they have even hit their potential on offense yet. But you're right. This offense does build around Travis Kelce. We said that in the first game when we were there for the opener when they lost to Detroit and Travis missed that game, is who else was going to step up? Well, you got, almost a handful of games under your belt for others to get acquainted with Patrick Mahomes and get that offense going. This is one you shouldn't worry, but it is the NFL, and we did see Arizona knock off Dallas when nobody expected that. So can it happen? Yes. Do I expect it to happen? No, but the spread's a whole nother thing. You're right. The Chiefs have not been too good against the spread, and this might be another night of it if Travis isn't playing.
I still can, in good conscience, endorse betting the Broncos in any way, shape, or form.
I agree.
And certainly not with the points here. And you're right, Dad. The only argument for this is it's the NFL. Weird stuff happens all the time. We talked about that with the Titans-Colts game this last week, given the background for both of those teams coming into the game. Because if you look for the Chiefs, Week 1 not having Travis Kelce, different story than now. The Chiefs had 10 different players catch a pass against the Vikings last week, which is kind of the way they've operated. Noah Gray has been a good performer for them as the other tight end in that room for a while here. So I do think the Chiefs now, a little bit into the season, a little bit more set in the identity, are much more equipped to handle if Travis Kelce is not out there, or if he's out there and he's not 100% going into this game. But Dad, the far more important factor in this is the Chiefs have one of the best interior offensive lines in the NFL. You're going direct strength on direct weakness in this game when you look inside at Joe Thuney and Creed Humphrey and the guys that they've got in there. That's a murderer's row. We swapped out the tackles this offseason, but inside where they want to control the ground game here with Isaiah Pacheco and company, that is absolutely some of the Chiefs' best on some of the Broncos' absolute worst.
Well, and that's where they can really make hay in this game. As I mentioned, the Broncos are worst overall in defense and worst against the run. They're giving up 187 yards on the ground. So, even if you don't have Travis Kelce, this is where you can control the game with Pacheco. He actually, and Mahomes is actually third in carries. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is second in carries, but it's really Pacheco that's getting the job done, and they can control this game on the ground. This has been a real weak spot for the Denver part of the defense. The Denver defense overall has been a weak part, but they can be attacked. I agree with you right at the gut here. And I think that's where Kansas City can control this game.
I want to go back to something you said before, though, and it's so true. We got to stop blaming Russell Wilson for what's going on with this team right now. This isn't Russ's fault. I understand that he's become sort of a cartoon character for a lot of people in the last couple of years in the NFL with the Broncos country, let's ride stuff here. But you look at this Broncos offense, Dad, they've done one of the core tenets. Like I remember when Brian Kelly was at Notre Dame, we had the 4 quarters of winning, and it was all these different tenets and things that you had as, hey, if we do this, we're going to be playing winning football. And the first one for pretty much every football team is start fast. And for the Broncos, they've scored 27 points total on their 5 opening possessions this season. The only team that's done better than that is the San Francisco 49ers. They've come out hot. Russell Wilson has played better football. You give credit to Sean Payton, who's crafted the offense that's much more conducive to Russ's success with a lot more of the play action stuff, getting him on the move. The problem is you've got it not just bad for this year, but historically bad defense. And so I feel like most of us have gotten there, but I do feel like this needs to officially be the end of, hey, we're just going to make Russell Wilson stand up and answer for the sins of this entire bad team.
Yeah, they have to keep up the scoring because of their defense, which can be difficult to do. They're not a high-flying offense, but that side of the ball is not the issue. They don't have a big-time number 1 receiver. Their leader is Sutton with 21 receptions. They have like 5 of them with double digits. But yeah, they have to go match score for score. When you sit there and say you're playing the Kansas City Chiefs, that seems like a pretty daunting task.
It is so daunting that I would probably, if I was going to bet this game, the over on 47 seems like the place to go on the number for the game. But if you're going to make me pick a side, I'll take the Chiefs and I'll give the points. Sorry, Broncos country, keep hiding. Coming up next, though, speaking of points, let's head to college and take a look at a matchup this season that might have the scoreboard operator fully pass out next here on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. We got a huge matchup between Washington and Oregon this weekend, and there's some added luster with the matchup between Michael Penix Jr. and Bo Nix, two star quarterbacks, two Heisman favorites. Guys, Michael Penix Jr. has been rolling 1,999 yards, 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions in 5 starts. But this is a rivalry game, okay? There's a lot of pressure, so how do you handle it? Let's hear from the Washington head coach.
I just know Mike well enough to know just make it about us and focus on us, and that's a ton of respect that we have for Bo Nix and what he does. He's a great athlete, quarterback, does it all for their team as well. So, but for us, for Mike, it's about just doing his thing because we know the level he can operate at. It's elite. And if he just is himself and stays within his means and trusts his teammates, big things are always going to happen, just like they have each and every Saturday for him.
Like, did Michael Penix Jr. have any idea what was coming his way when he transferred from Indiana? I mean, he was recovering from injury. The program was kind of a shell of itself, and look at him now.
I mean, the one thing he did have an idea about was the man you just heard from there, because Kalen DeBoer was at Indiana, was the offensive coordinator in that 2019 season that was among Penix's best and amongst Indiana's best. And so coming over and joining up with him, a no-brainer for the quarterback in the marriage, has sung. Dad, heading into this weekend, you got any idea who the odds-on favorite on DraftKings Sportsbook is to win the Heisman Trophy?
I would say, well, we know it's Penix or Caleb Williams, right? So
it is Michael Penix Jr.
I would go there, and that's going to change weekly, and let's hope it stays Michael Penix Jr. because Notre Dame does a good job defending Caleb Williams this Saturday night. We will see. But look, we talked about at the beginning of the season, he's got both his 1,000-yard receivers back. This offense, one of the most potent, if not the most potent in all the land, rivaling Oregon's offense. I mean, think about what these quarterbacks, and I'll tell you that the best number, and as an old lineman, I'm sure you would appreciate it. Penix is 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Nix 15 touchdowns, 1 interception. Both quarterbacks have only been sacked 3 times each.
Yeah,
just 3 times. So they are at home in the pocket. The jerseys are staying clean. They're getting time to look downfield because both of them are, the average downfield for Penix is over 11 yards, for Nix over 9 yards. So they get the ball downfield. We know what they do that in college. So that's been one of the more impressive things to me. And I know you're calling this game, man. By the way, the schedule you've had this year calling games has been nothing but incredible. As something I was doing a couple of years ago with Kate Scott. We didn't get anywhere the schedule you got. So, I mean, I feel like we got screwed with the schedule you're getting. I mean, you're getting some awesome games to call. I'm looking forward to watching this one before I head over to Notre Dame and USC here in South Bend. But this is going to be, it should be a shootout, right? Let's hope we don't expect one thing and get another.
Yeah, I think you can comfortably say defense is going to be optional on the back end in a lot of ways here. I saw Pete Thamel was on SportsCenter the other day and said there's going to be 34 NFL scouts at this game, largely for the quarterbacks involved. You've got great beef up front with the offensive lines. You've got solid running backs. Bucky Irvin's one of my favorite backs in the Pac-12 over in Oregon. But, Dad, it is so fascinating to look at the styles that make fights in this game. Michael Penix Jr. being listed as the Heisman frontrunner and the Heisman favorite, at least on the betting side of it, going into this game, because I feel like Washington doesn't necessarily get the buzz nationally that would go along with this team. There's a lot of folks inside college football that have looked and said, as this year we had Georgia that looked kind of down. We weren't sure who looked like the number one team until last week when they did that against Kentucky. Yeah. Some people were saying, hey, Washington's been chewing people up and spitting them out so far this season. They could be the number one team. I'm encouraged that we already have these quarterbacks talked about like this, because whoever wins this game is going to see a massive bump in their popularity and the way that they're discussed, because outside of Texas and Alabama and then Red River last week, you could throw Notre Dame, Ohio State in there as well. This is here in that caliber of game. In the history of this rivalry, Dad, these two teams have never met before this weekend as AP top 10 ranked teams. So this is uncharted territory for two teams in the second year under their current head coach who have gotten into a really, really rarefied era already.
Did we see what the over-under on this? I know last year there were 71 points. Washington won 37-34 in Eugene. 67 and a half is the over, which I'm going to take. And I think, when we were looking at the rankings of undefeated teams, Washington was actually holding that number one spot. Georgia, the game, again, you covered, they looked like, the number one team again, did Georgia. So I get that. But to me, it's Georgia, Michigan. Now, again, Michigan hasn't really played anybody. They're going to get their tests with Penn State and Ohio State. It's those two and Washington, to me, that are the top three teams. I agree. I think Washington has not been given the love maybe they deserve, and this is a way for them to prove it, and some of that might be the Pac-12 and their reputation, though they have had plenty of teams in the top 25, and this is when we start to see them knock one another off, which is exactly what's going to happen here with one of these teams losing. But I know you won't pick the game, and I know we will on tomorrow, but I know I'm kind of leaning the Washington way. I picked them to be in my Final Four, so this would go a long way toward doing that.
Yeah, I think right now, if you were to ask me to really situate a top four in college football, I'd probably go Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, and Oklahoma at this point, just because Washington does not have that marquee win on their schedule. That's what this week is going to go a long way in how we organize it, because part of this has been, hey, we know for the Big Ten, the meat of the schedule hits in November. That's when the three good teams play each other. We'll find out about them then. For the Pac-12, it's here and now. And, Dad, even inside the Pac-12, we came into this year with a quartet. It was Washington, Oregon, USC, and Utah that we all felt like, oh, man, this could be a juggernaut. And so far now, you had no Cam Rising at the helm for Utah at quarterback, and so they took a loss already. It seems like we're kind of downgrading expectations for them a bit, since it sounds like Cam Rising's knee was in a little bit worse place than we anticipated or heard about going into the season. And then for USC, we'll see what happens in South Bend Saturday night, but that defense has not looked like it is capable, even with Caleb Williams, who I still think quietly is the best quarterback in college football. Still has not been able to overcome that defense in a way that seems sustainable once you hit the good teams on your schedule. And so there you find your way back to a matchup that feels like it's kind of going to decide the fate of the Pac-12 this year between Washington and Oregon. They'll have more tough games. It doesn't get easier from here, but whoever comes out of this one with the win is going to go a long way in deciding, I think, not only just the outcome for the immediacy here, but the Pac-12, and then really what this looks like as the closing stanza for the conference. They haven't had a college football playoff team since Washington many moons ago. And to end on that note here, even though the conference is going to be disbanded, would be at least a testament to, hey, there's been good football played on the West Coast, and we're seeing it finally rewarded this season.
Well, they have. I mean, after this game with Oregon, a ranked, obviously, Oregon team, they have Arizona State and Stanford, two non-ranked teams. Then they finished 4 straight ranked: USC, Utah, Oregon State, Washington State. So the Pac-12, they get tested out there. There is absolutely no doubt about it. And I would go different on my top 4. I would not have Florida State in there. They've been a little iffy and spotty to me at times. I would have Washington in that right now. But that's the thing. It's all going to play out. That's the beauty of this. We're going to see it all play out on the field.
Right. So you can talk about the quality of the teams. I've focused more on the quality of the wins. Florida State's got a couple of good ones, and Clemson and LSU to start the year out of conference. But you're right. It all is going to play out on the field now. And this weekend, man, if you haven't watched these two teams, I was trying to think, Daddy, you get ready for the opening, you try and think about the self of these games and how you talk about both quarterbacks in this one. And I think what I've settled on is you've got two quarterbacks who are transfer players playing at the absolute best ability of their career right now. I would trust Michael Penix most when things are going right in the flow of an offense that has a bunch of NFL stuff. Washington is playing positionless football in a way we talked about for a team like the Atlanta Falcons or what the Miami Dolphins are doing right now. You've got running backs who can catch. You've got receivers that have lined up in the backfield. 4 different wideouts have a rushing touchdown on the season. They give you a little bit of everything all of the time. But Michael Penix, when things are going well, I trust the most. When things are going wrong, that's when I trust Bo Nix the most, because that man has been so used to making magic for a long time. And under Dan Lanning, he's found a way to do that on the positive side a lot more often than we saw in the Auburn version on the negative side.
The one thing I'll say is Oregon's defense. I mean, 3 of the 5 games, single digits, and one of them just 10 points. Texas Tech put 30 on them, but the defense has been playing somewhat interestingly decent for teams that can give up a lot of points.
Yeah, Dan Lanning, the former Georgia and Alabama disciple, no stranger to great defense. We'll talk to another guy who sees great defense every day in practice, the Steelers wideout Allen Robinson, next. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield here on the DraftKings Network. Hoping to talk to Steelers wide receiver Allen Robinson here in just a few. Coming off of, Dad, one of the most stereotypically AFC North games we've seen in quite some time between them and the Baltimore Ravens, where they get a win and can roll in feeling pretty good on the bye this week. But, man, that was one. Points were always going to be difficult to come by. You figured that Steelers defense was going to bounce back pretty hard after what was an embarrassing loss the week before for them, and boy, did they ever.
They really did. I mean, I had thought Pittsburgh was going to be the worst team in this division. Here they are right on top. Mike Tomlin doing his thing, going on what, year 62 of being over 500. Actually, I think 16. It's been amazing what he's able to do, because early on, the Kenny Pickett, Matt Canada, OC, and quarterback didn't seem to be meshing too well. And we thought, there's going to be some issues there. But always that tough defense for Pittsburgh, always something that helps carry the team, and they're doing it yet again.
Yeah, speaking of playing defense right now, apparently your house is under siege here. Yeah. Dad, you and Mom in South Bend, screened in porch right now. And we're in the middle of the show. We're trying to clang and bang and give you guys takes. And we find out that apparently my mom has become Dr. Doolittle upstairs, and you've got birds, rabbits inside the screened in porch. What the hell's going on in your house right now, Dad?
I don't know. We usually leave the screened in porch outside door open if the dogs want to go in and out. But that unfortunately means others can come in. And the great thing about this, we have 3 dogs, 2 pugs, Hank and Harry. Now they're 12 is Hank. Harry's still rambunctious at 7. And then our bulldog, Ted, who is just 2. If Ted was out there, that room would be wrecked. The screened in porch would no longer have a screen, because he would be destroying it trying to get to the bunny.
And the bird and the bunny would no longer have souls, because Ted would separate them from their body. He's committed murder before on campus.
That's what I was going to say. So he wants to eat them.
Well, I don't think he's not a vicious dog by any stretch. I don't know if he's attacking. He's not getting the bird, because the bird's going to be smart and stay the hell up in the air. And last I checked, the dog, Ted can't climb walls. The bunny would be in a bit of a problem. What exactly Ted would do if he got him, I don't know. Ted is not like this killer who's going to get him in his jaws and just start eating him. He doesn't do that. But I think it would be just the chase for him. But the thing, he'd be a wrecking ball while he's doing it, is he would destroy. He's like a downhill linebacker where everything is straight, everything's forward, and he destroys everything in his path.
So it sounds like
you want Ted on R4 on kickoff, 100%.
Yeah.
He's a wedge buster in the purest form of it. A lot better morning for you guys than me on that front. I woke up and found a spider right in my sink as I was going to brush my teeth in the dark. Immediate eject.
No.
It was daddy long legs. I tried drowning it first. I ended up getting a vacuum cleaner and sucking it up there. So it was not a great start to the day for me there, Dad. A difficult one there. Why don't we get started looking ahead at this weekend in the NFL with a little something that we have got to call 3 for Thursday. Jesse, 3 things about the NFL slate this weekend that have us thinking heading into, what is it, week 6 now in the NFL? Dear God.
God, they just keep going. Yeah, so 3 things about, this weekend that we're thinking about, like you said. So we have 2 remaining teams in the NFL that are undefeated. Eagles, 49ers, both minus 110 to be the final undefeated team in the league on the DraftKings Sportsbook, okay? So that's what we have on the DraftKings Sportsbook. But if you look deeper here, okay, there's an interesting market for which team they're going to have their first loss against. So for the Eagles, the favorite team to beat them first is Miami at plus 155. That's their Week 7 opponent. This week's opponent, the Jets, are plus 220. So that's the second best odds for the Eagles. Now for the 49ers, the favorite team to beat them is this week's opponent, Cleveland, at plus 170. So then the 3 for Thursday, it's like, will these 3 things happen on Sunday? The first thing, the 49ers will improve to 6-0 with a win over the Browns. What do we think?
Wow.
Dad, this one I would have felt a lot better about, because the Browns defense we know has been a really tough out all year long. I saw Brandon Thorne, who's a great offensive line guru and expert on Twitter, pointing out that we get an unbelievable matchup in this game, looking at left tackle on pass rusher here with Myles Garrett and company going up in this matchup. But overall, Deshaun Watson been banged up again this week. Shoulder injury is a concern there. And while I love Dorian Thompson-Robinson, it didn't go so hot for him the last time out when he was pressed into duty. And at the very least, if you do get Deshaun Watson in the game, he's operating at much less than 100%. And if you don't have your absolute A game against this 49ers outfit, they're going to not only beat you, but they're going to hurt you in the process. So I would say 49ers improving to 6-0 feels like a veritable certainty at this point.
Yeah, the offense for Cleveland just isn't really doing a whole lot for anybody right now. They're led by their defense. And much like we saw when they did go against one another, Micah Parsons and Trent Williams, I mean, Trent Williams did his thing, right? Trent Williams showed why he's walking in.
They also had a very good plan for Micah Parsons or offensively, did the 49ers. They gave him a lot of looks there. Like one-on-one, I hope we get a lot of one-on-one shots between Trent Williams and Myles Garrett. Because you could argue Myles Garrett is the best pure edge rusher in the NFL right now, even with Nick Bosa lurking on the other sideline.
Yeah, but Micah moves around some, just like Myles Garrett. We've seen him stand up and rush the middle as well. So these great rushers of today, a lot of times aren't just rushing from one spot anymore. You're doing the smart thing, and if they're versatile enough to move them around. But when we did see the Micah Parsons, Trent Williams one-on-one, it was no contest, right? I mean, Trent Williams did Trent Williams thing. So I am looking forward to when Myles and Trent are one-on-one, because Trent is not a guy you have to say, hey, let's give him a lot of help. He doesn't need a lot of help. So those are the matchups that I really look forward to. But again, I just think San Francisco's too strong on both sides of the ball. Cleveland is strong on the defensive side, not on the offensive side. San Francisco is strong on both sides of the ball. I don't see Cleveland beating them.
No, I would agree. The Eagles improving to 6-0 with a win over the Jets as the second thing here, Dad. This is also one I lean towards just because I think we saw the Jets offense turn back into a bit of a pumpkin last week. You're not going to rush for 175 yards or whatever it was like you did against the Broncos that are worse than the NFL there. I think there's some spots in the secondary you might be able to take advantage of. We talked to Mina Kimes early in the season about attacking the linebacker level as well. But outside of an unconscious stretch in the Kansas City Chiefs game, I still don't know if we've seen it consistently enough from Zach Wilson to say he's in a position to take advantage of some of those deficiencies that have shown up during the transition from Jonathan Gannon to this new Eagles regime on the other side. So I would lean still in favor of Philly there. The matchup of great on great, the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line that remains probably the best in the NFL, going up against that Jets defensive front, absolutely going to be showtime. We'll see if maybe the Jets can step up and stop the brotherly shove, although it seems unlikely based on history. But that one, too, I would feel pretty good about the Eagles being able to move on here, who also, like we've talked about with Kansas City, haven't played their best football offensively yet.
No, they haven't. That's why you give probably San Francisco the nod of being the best team in the NFL right now, even though there's two undefeateds. And those two teams play each other, I think, coming up next month in November. So I'm with you about the O-line of Philly and the D-line of the Jets, because flip that around and Zach Wilson could be running for his life, right? That O-line has been a weakness for the Jets, and that D-line has just been a ton.
And unfortunately, they just lost their best offensive lineman in Elijah Vera Tucker for the season again, it sounds like, which is a brutal blow for a unit that was already struggling mightily.
Yeah. So that's the side of the ball. Zach Wilson's going to be running around a little bit. I think I'm sorry, it was, and I'll say real quick, December 3rd is when Philadelphia and San Francisco play. But so that side of the ball, I think, is going to be tough for the Jets to get a running game going. And I think Zach's going to feel some pressure in the passing game as well. So this is one I'm looking at Philly taking over again in this game. We sit there and talk about the brotherly shove or the tush push, whatever you want to call it. And Robert Saleh saying we're going to try and give Jalen Hurts 11 kisses, all 11 defenders trying to get him. I mean, they were talking a bunch about that. C.J. Mosley said, the best way, the linebacker for the Jets, he said, the best way to stop this? Don't let them be in 3rd and 1 situations or on the 1 yard line on the goal line, because they have got this play down. I mean, it's not like you can practice against it. You're not going full practice to go against this. All you can do is strategically say what you want to do. And in all honesty, there's not a lot of strategy to do this as well. All right. I mean, this is, we call it elbows and bleep things, when you get down there.
Elbows and bleep holes.
Yeah, exactly. D-lineman going low, O-lineman trying to go lower and get a little bit of push. And you can't even bring guys from the side. They won't get there soon enough, but with the guys that are pushing Jalen Hurts. And as I said last week, you can't just be a linebacker and dive over the top, because you have no leverage at all because you're in the air. So you've got to have your feet on the ground. And if you can't have your feet on the ground because the D-line isn't making penetration, you don't have a chance to stop this thing. So it's going to be one of the great questions of the offseason is the competition committee going to outlaw this play, or are they going to leave it alone?
Yeah, I still think that's such a coward's way out if the NFL bails these teams out of this just because one team is really, really good at something and it's starting to hurt everyone else's feelings. Not hurt the players, because I know people are going to talk about that and everyone wants to hold up the Giants. You know what? If your team can't execute it without your offensive players getting hurt, then don't run the play. It's very simple. If you can't do it, don't do it. And that's the case for the majority of the teams in the NFL. I get way more fired up than I have any right to talking about this play. I don't know why I've turned myself into one of the foremost tush-push defenders, but here we are. It just seems lame. It seems so overwhelmingly lame for people to step in and say, oh, they're too good at this. Or you hear Al Michaels on Thursday Night Football complaining about how ugly it is. Ugly, it's football. We watched the triple option for years in football. It's ugly. It's life in the trenches. Deal with it, Al.
So here's the thing. I agree with everything you said about that. From you don't get rid of it because one team is doing it better than the other teams. Everybody has the ability to do it if they want to, but they're very successful. I think they've succeeded on 13 of 16 tries this year on the brotherly shove. I just overall, in general, am not a fan of being allowed to push said running back or ball carrier, or running back or a quarterback in this instance. Overall, I am not in favor of that. I do not think that should be allowed, but they to me, to disallow it would be for the reason that you don't think you should be allowed to do it, not that Philly is doing it so well that we have to stop this because it's not fair to the other team. That would be a Bush League reason. I 100% agree with you that if other teams can't do it, that's on them. That's not on the Eagles, who can do it incredibly well. My thing is, I don't think it's fair overall to be able to push a ball carrier forward.
I hate myself for getting triggered again by this. I'm going to treat this like the NFL Top 100 that every year criminally underrates Zach Martin and gets me all up in my feelings. I'm going to instead put this aside and understand this whole conversation is designed to hurt me and trigger me, and I'm not going to let the bad guys win on this one. Instead, Dad, I'm going to get to our third thing from the upcoming weekend and whether or not we think it will happen this Sunday. Dad, how are we feeling about a little Minshew mania in a revenge game against the Jacksonville Jaguars going into this weekend? Anthony Richardson, the Colts rookie quarterback, put on IR right now, so going to be on the shelf for the next 4 weeks after injuring that shoulder in their last game, where Gardner Minshew's able to come out and help orchestrate them to a win against the Tennessee Titans. They turn around once again inside the division, and this time go up against a place that he knows very well. Jacksonville, by the way, coming off a pretty good weekend for them, getting a win over in their soon-to-be new home in London, as they spent 2 weeks there and finished it off by beating the Buffalo Bills, left a good taste in their home fans' mouths. Dad, do you think Gardner Minshew, now going in, the full-time starter going into this week, not taking over in the middle of a game and riding that wave, can get it done against the Jags team that also has a lot of positive momentum right now?
Sure he can. Yeah, and good for Jacksonville. 2 games, they stayed there in London, won them both. So kudos to them for doing that. But you got to believe, looking through the teams and just saying this quickly, Gardner Minshew is the best backup quarterback on a team, right? I mean, I'm trying to sit there and think of another team that has a better backup quarterback that you would trust more. Is there one out there that, and I'm just saying this off the top of my head, there may be one that I'm missing, but regardless, they have one of the, if not the best backup, one of the best backups in the NFL. Correct? And Gardner Minshew has starting experience.
I would say recent starting experience, seems never flustered by the moment. You know, a guy like Jacoby Brissett in Washington might also come up there. Tyrod Taylor has been really secure in that role for a long time also, who's in New York now, who we might see this weekend if Daniel Jones' neck isn't all the way healed up. So there's guys in that range. But in general, you're right. Baker Mayfield exists in that group of trustworthy backups whose names you know, especially for him because he's got the personality, that Mississippi mud flap on him, all that good stuff.
I will say then he's in the team picture of best backup quarterback. So I have all the confidence in the world that he can get this done. We've seen Jacksonville look good, but we've also seen them not look so good at times. So if they can get the running game going, that's obviously a key. Minshew isn't mobile like Anthony Richardson is, so more of a stay stationary in that pop, move around some. Obviously, he can move. All quarterbacks basically can move, but not what Anthony Richardson is. So
I just like the idea he's not actually immobile.
No,
he technically can move.
He's not stuck in the pocket, but he's not what Anthony Richardson brings to that team. So I do like their chances because, again, I like the running game. Zach Moss has really stepped and done well. He's averaging 5 yards a carry. He's been running in place of Jonathan Taylor, who just came back last week. So he'll get integrated more into the offense as well. So I absolutely have confidence in Gardner Minshew to pull this off.
All right. So we will wait and see how that looks going into this weekend. We'll obviously have plenty more NFL preview heading up for you tomorrow, Dad, here. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like we were able to get a hold of Allen Robinson today. Hopefully we can make that happen down the road here at some point, Dad. But if we're talking about injuries relative to the tush push and all those things, I saw this yesterday on the NBA front, and I wanted to bounce this off you. The NBA came out and said, their executive vice president and head of basketball operations, Joe Dumars, came out and said it has communicated the league to the players that they are really emphasizing the 82-game season this year. And the league is now propping out this idea that they have data indicating that player rest didn't actually translate to players being healthier. All the stuff that we have been sold and taught about the second night of back-to-backs and 3 games in 5 days and yada, yada, they're basically saying now, oh, we have new information that says that's not true, while they admit that they are in conversations with media rights partners for the next couple of years, while they're admitting they want more guys to play in the regular season. Dad, I know the NBA's got a much better track record overall with player health and safety than its counterpart in the NFL, who rightly draws the ire and scrutiny of a lot of people when it tries to do anything. But man, this seems like awfully convenient timing for the NBA to try and come out and say, oh no, we swear we've got data on this that says you're not actually at risk in these situations and you need to just get out there and play these 82 games.
So the exact quote from Dumars, we've got more data and it just doesn't show that resting, sitting guys out correlates with lack of injuries or fatigue or anything like that. What it does show is guys may not be as efficient on the second night of a back-to-back, but in terms of injury and things like that we thought that it did prior, as we got more data, we realized that's not holding up. Listen, we know they don't want guys sitting. It's horrible for the ticket holders, right, who are buying tickets to these games and all of a sudden the stars aren't playing. But, you know the NBA players will find a way around this. They're just going to get themselves on an injury report with an ankle, right? If they're going to want to sit out, they grab an ankle. They grab a hammy, the day before or the first game of that doubleheader.
We do know the one mitigating factor this year is there's now that individual games requirement for a lot of the new awards, the player participation policy with NBA, MVP, and a bunch of the others, where you got to play at least 65 games here now. And Dad, this is also not the players driving this. These are teams. Once we went through that thing with Kawhi Leonard with the Toronto Raptors, teams at the beginning of the season are mapping out the games where they will strategically rest their star players. So it's going to be an adjustment from that side if the teams are buying that this data is actually valid coming from the NBA, which we've seen anecdotally, Dad, players talking about, hey, for all this rest, it sure seems like we got a lot of injured guys popping up. But it's one thing to see that and think that, and another thing to provide the data for it with this backdrop that, oh, by the way, we've got all these rules going into place. We know this is focused on the television product and making sure guys are out there it just doesn't seem all that believable timing wise for this information to all of a sudden drop.
No, but it doesn't. But can you go to the NBA in the past and say guys in a must, and I'm not saying anything about the players of today. The game was played more physical years ago, correct? Way more physical, and guys played 82 games. And I would be interested to see the injury rate then. I mean, because it's still basketball, and the game was more physical and harder back then, and guys were playing 82 games. They were. So that's something the league can say, look at what these guys did. Why can't you guys do that?
Let's put a pin in this then, because I think it's fascinating to consider the junction that we're at right now with the NBA, and if this is necessary right now for the health of the league. Next year on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Before we get into what we're going to talk about, I just wanted to say reports are coming out that Taylor Swift will be at the Chiefs game tonight. So our national nightmare is over. We are hoping that we will be seeing Taylor Swift at the game. She plans to go out there and watch. She's been at the Jets and Bears games, and now apparently maybe she's going to hang out with Ciara at this one. I don't know. Who knows?
I mean, Vikings fans have to be absolutely sick.
Yeah.
That theirs was the game that she does. If she truly does go 3 and 4 weeks and the only one was not on the road at Minnesota, you've got to start to worry about if you're going to be included on future tour dates, what this means for the long-term ramifications for the city, Dad. It's pretty brutal.
Did she play in Minnesota? I don't even know what her tour schedule was. I don't even know if she played there or not. If she just bypassed that city concert-wise and football fan-wise altogether, that would be, that's not a feather in your cap for that one. So if Travis doesn't play in the game, do you think he asked Andy Reid, hey, can I go sit in the box with her?
Oh, God. Could you? No. Could you even?
No, I'm kidding.
We wouldn't be able to watch any of the game because the cameras would just be.
How about it?
Yeah.
So true.
You go picture in picture on that one. You just got the fan cam on them the entire time and give the people what they want. I've enjoyed so much watching Taylor Swift, the hardcore, diehard Swifties online, all of a sudden turn into the most prominent New Heights listeners on planet Earth.
Yeah.
It really has been a heartwarming merger of talent on both sides of this. So, again, very exciting times. Great to hear that back. Mostly because I enjoy how angry it's going to make a certain section of the NFL watching population. And you big babies need to go out here and just take your medicine again. Because we'll be back here serving it up for you again.
Why do people get so upset at this? You're not missing any of the game.
Nope.
And if the announcers talk about Taylor Swift for a little bit, so what? It's a 3-hour game. You see every play. You're not missing plays. I don't understand it at all. And they're not like taking whole series and talking about the situation, but who knows? I think it's great. I love it. I think it's awesome. She just won't get to see, her guy play tonight probably.
Maybe.
I don't see him playing tonight. I see the smart move of him sitting and getting a lot of extra time.
The one thing we know after last week is it will not be because Travis doesn't want to be out there.
Oh, no.
That guy, after seeing that and him winding up back in that game, you got a clear image. For all the stuff people are going to talk about with Travis Kelce right now and this relationship and the podcast, that's an incredibly tough, determined player who's a huge leader on that team, who's going to be doing everything in his power to be out there. But you got to take the helmet away from the player sometime, and this seems like one of those instances. So we'll wait and see on both those fronts if Travis Kelce is going to show up tonight. But, Dad, speaking of people that are a little upset, there was a lot of uproar yesterday after this soundbite went viral from a Penn State press conference with James Franklin, their head football coach, that got asked a very interesting question that we'll let you hear right now. Take a listen.
A follow-up to what you were just asked there about Drew. Is there a balance, though, between, hey, we need you to throw the ball deep no matter. Just take a shot. Don't overthink it. Take a shot. We need to see it. We're going to call it. And we need you to get some confidence in doing this as opposed to even giving a young quarterback the chance to say, hey, just check it down if it's not there.
I don't really understand what you're saying because we would never. My skin is curling when you say just drop back and chuck it deep no matter what. Like that is like I don't even know what you're saying. It's like you're speaking like from
just
Mars.
Just send a guy on a post pattern, take the shot, throw it.
No matter what.
Give your receiver a chance to make a play on a ball. Even if he might be covered 30 yards down the field, maybe you think he'll be open 45 yards down the field and like Godwin did or with Jahan or KJ.
I still don't like you're speaking Japanese. We have never done that. Just throw the ball up and maybe he'll be open and maybe he'll catch. Like my skin is you're making me uncomfortable. Like I don't know what you're talking about.
The whole exchange made me deeply uncomfortable, Dad. It was Corey Geiger of the DK Pittsburgh Sports. And the sad part is I saw this happening on my timeline and almost immediately saw a tweet from Corey Geiger that said, yeah, I asked a bad question, but the people in my DMs telling me I need to kill myself probably can pump the brakes a little bit. We always go too far with this stuff. Leave the guy alone. He asked an awkward question in the press conference. The Dad, quite honestly, it was poorly worded. It was rambling, all of those things that I've never been in a press scrum like that. So I usually afford people a bit of grace there. But the idea that, yeah, have you thought about with the quarterback with the big arm, calling more deep shots and telling him to be more aggressive, sentiment wise, isn't actually as far fetched as James Franklin wants to make it seem here.
We have seen plays like that where the intention at the start of the play is to throw it deep no matter what. Right. I mean, hell, I just called the game, Monday night. In Vegas, with Vegas and Green Bay, Jordan Love a couple of times just hoisted a deep ball up into basically, the safety in the corner on the receiver. But they lead the league, does Green Bay, in getting pass interference calls on deep plays. So to them, sometimes it's a play. Throw it deep, maybe get the interference call. But we've seen guys throw it up and say, I trust my guy to get the ball more than their guy to get the ball. It's called a 50-50 ball that sometimes you think it's 70-30 in your favor. So I'm with you. It maybe was worded poorly. And, and I understand how James Franklin was saying, wait a minute, I don't get the gist of what you're saying. But the gist I get is there are times where you're saying, okay, I see this coverage. I'm going to throw to this. Even if there becomes help over the top, there's going to be another guy there. Even if not, if there's good coverage, I trust my guy to get the ball, and I'm going to heave it up there. I mean, that happens. That happens all the time.
Yeah, I understand a coach's general aversion to this idea that football is as simple as that sometimes. I saw a lot of people calling this question like a Madden brain question. I get it. You've got pre and post snap reads. You've got all these things a quarterback is supposed to have their eyes on, the keys and how they change versus certain coverages and all of these ways that you process the game at every position, but especially at quarterback. Like, I get it. Very, very hard sport. We do a very complicated, difficult thing. We spend a lot of time preparing for it. But sometimes football does just get to, hey, we got a guy who we think's better is better than they're better, and we're going to look for situations where you're not throwing into triple coverage. It's not no matter what. And sometimes coaches see players do that and aren't thrilled when a quarterback decides, hey, I got a guy down there and he might be covered, but I'm going to throw it open and give him the shot. It's the Patrick Mahomes, bleep it, Tyreek's down there somewhere where he's just going to cut one loose and let it go right there. But I do feel like in a reaction to how the question was posed, and in part because of James Franklin's response, we've made this out to sound a lot more nonsensical than it really is at its core, which again, you're in charge of your words. If you're the reporter, you've got to ask the question in a better way. But it's this idea of basically, hey, are you thinking about dialing up more design shot plays to give your receivers and your quarterback a chance to air it out a little bit more? That's not all that crazy to ask.
No, it's not. Because how many times you say, if I see the matchup I want on the outside where I'm getting that pre-snap and it's man, and I know I trust my guy on that guy, that all of a sudden it's a go route and I'm hoisting it up there. And sometimes the safety will come over the top. If it's man free, and they'll help over the top and it looks like you throw into double coverage, but you're giving your guy a shot. It definitely happens. It was just worded in a weird way, but I understand the sentiment of what he was asking of, you go deep at times to give your guy a chance to catch the ball. Even though it looks like coverage, you trust your guy, or maybe you get a PI call.
And I mean, honestly, with Penn State and Drew Aller, who's got a live cannon for an arm. Not necessarily the worst thing in the world here. And, given the fact that right now you're getting ready in a stretch of games where we know the most important ones are going to come up here at the end of November for really everyone in the Big Ten East. Not a bad time to try it out right now before you get to the good on good with Ohio State and Michigan. So a really interesting moment in college football yesterday as, I don't know, we kind of hit the doldrums during the week, and every once in a while you see these weird interactions between media, coaches, players, all that stuff. James Franklin, Lord knows, giving of content here, and we thank him for that. But at the end of the day, hopefully cooler heads prevail and leave him alone. Like, we went through this with the NCAA stuff where, we all disagreed with the way the NCAA operated with the Tez Watkins situations. You don't need to threaten anybody online. You don't need to be a weirdo about it.
Who was typing out a threat and hitting send? I mean, come on, stop. Don't be a loser. I mean, that is just disgusting. It's ridiculous.
Great advice, just in general. Don't be a loser. Yeah. Be like our next guest, a winner. Coming up, we're excited to talk to Saints rookie defensive tackle star Bryan Bresee next here on GoJo and Golic.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Bryan Bresee was drafted 29th in the 2023 NFL Draft by the Saints. He made his NFL debut in Week 1 versus the Titans. He's had 1.5 sacks in 4 games this season, and he took the time to chat with GoJo and Golic earlier this week about his rookie season and what we can expect from the Saints moving forward here.
All right, very excited to talk to New Orleans Saints rookie first-round pick Bryan Bresee joining us here on behalf of Sleep Number and the NFL's partnership with the American Cancer Society for Crucial Catch. Obviously, want to hear all about that project, something I know is near and dear to you, Bryan, and certainly should be near and dear to everybody for, fighting against this disease. But you're a quarter of your way into your rookie season, man. How you feeling right now? How you doing?
Feeling good. It's been amazing being out here and getting to kind of live out the NFL dream and so it's been amazing.
I always wonder, for a guy like you who from freshman year on knew you were destined for the NFL, it's always one of the questions, going back from when I played to way before I played, when guys go from college to the pros, what did you find the biggest difference for you that became a realization of like, oh wow, this is the big time?
I think for me, kind of, being on film and seeing some of those guys that you grow up watching and kind of seeing like, oh, we're playing them this week has been pretty cool for me. But I would probably say that's kind of been probably been the biggest thing for me.
Was there anyone even on your own team? Like I did the off-season program a couple of times in New Orleans, and I remember sitting across from Drew Brees at breakfast one day, and I'm like, what am I supposed to say to Drew Bleep and Breeze right now? You come in and you're a first-round pick with all these expectations on you, but was there any moment like that even in your own building where you looked up and felt like that?
I wouldn't really say that. I think, there's obviously some guys in there who have been really special players in the NFL and guys that have been a huge help to me, like having Cam Jordan on the D-line here, who's played for so long and been so successful in the NFL, and just having a guy like that to just kind of lead you and show you the way. And so he's been a big help for me, and just definitely cool just to have somebody like that in the locker room and out on the field playing with you.
Yeah, I remember Mike calling me, and his biggest worry was if I snap the ball to Drew Brees and I break his fingers, how bad that's going to be for me. How about on the field for you? What did you find in the NFL that was maybe something you didn't expect, from speed to size of guys to something that was, okay, this is the big jump?
Yeah, I mean, I would say all that kind of stuff. Just these are the best of the best in the world. All these players who were the top guys at their college and now are in the National Football League. So I mean, everyone's big, fast, strong, and every week it's the biggest game of your season. So just coming in every week and preparing for that and seeing who you're going against, and but I mean, everyone's super talented in this league.
A little past the quarter pole of the season here. You guys sitting at 3-2. That bunch of the three teams at the top, you and Tampa and Atlanta. What's the talk in the locker room amongst the team and the defensive side of the ball on where this team is right now?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I think we just kind of take it week by week. We just preparing ourselves every week for who our next opponent is, and just doing everything we can to get ready for that. I don't think any of us really look into the long run of things, and yet obviously, and are just kind of focused in on who we got in the upcoming week.
Derek Carr comes over to the team this year, and you've obviously watched him from afar, like a lot of the rest of us have. And I feel like, as far as where his standing is in the league, a polarizing quarterback for a lot of people, trying to gauge how good they thought Derek Carr was during his time with the Raiders. Having him been in the building with him now, watching him battle through injury at this point, you've got Jameis in that quarterback room that's been out there now. But what has Derek Carr been for you behind the scenes? What's he been for this team behind the scenes?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, battling through injury and just seeing, that guy's doing anything he can to be on the field. And I think that shows a lot of resilience to all of us. And, just a great leader for the offense, somebody who everyone kind of, can lean on. And he's amazing in the building. And another guy who's just, like DeMario of the offense, really, just somebody who's a great pro and somebody who kind of, you just look at and he's doing things right. So.
Dad mentioned the college aspect. What's it like watching your old team now as a fan on the other side here? As a former player, you're not really a fan, but you don't have any control over it anymore. So what's it been like watching Clemson this season for you?
That's definitely a big talk in the locker room, just kind of looking back on everybody's college team and especially for me being 1 year removed, I haven't played with most of the guys on the team and seeing them go. But it's hard for me to kind of criticize college, because you remember when you're in college and if you lose a big game and you see all these older guys kind of talking down and whatever it is on you, you're like, come on, dude, like you were just here. But so that'll never be me. Just enjoy watching them and obviously wishing the best for them.
How tough was it? Because it's still, listen, I've been out since '85, Mike since 2012, and we still live and die in that Ohio State when they beat Notre Dame, and then Notre Dame loses to Louisville. You're right out of it, and right in the first game, you see Duke take out your team. That had to be a tough moment for you.
Yeah, a little gut wrenching there watching that game. It's it's like you kind of turn into a diehard fan right when you leave. So, but those guys, all the coaches in there, obviously do a great job of preparing everyone, and that was a tough one, but excited for those guys to get back on track and get rolling.
What does the outside world get wrong about Dabo Swinney? He's another one that a lot of people have really strong feelings about from the outside looking in. Yeah,
he's, one of the best people I've ever met in my life. Just somebody who is so caring about his players, and a lot of people come up to me and ask me, like, is that how he really is, like, all the time? Like, we see him, I'm like, that's literally him every day. Like, him, his wife, Miss Kathleen, his whole family. There's just really, really good people who just mean so well. So, I think, sometimes he can get kind of the wrong rap on him.
Well, you've already found a great way to make use of the time through the first quarter-ish of the season. You got 1.5 sacks on the year from the D tackle spot. You're drawing a lot of attention in there. My dad played 9 years in the NFL and had 11.5 sacks. So after already getting about a tenth of his production in a quarter of the season, do you have any pass rushing tips that you can give my father at 60 years old to try and help him out now, Brian?
I think I need to learn something from him.
Dude, you're not going to learn a thing from me. Watch what I did. I got really good at knocking down passes. They always say, if you're not going to get there, get your hands up. That was kind of my mantra. I ain't going to get there, so I'm going to try and block some passes.
Real quick.
Yeah. I have a feeling you'll be getting to the quarterback a hell of a lot more.
No, it's incredible, Brian. It's been a ton of fun to watch you play so far, and what you've done on the field's already made a huge impact there in New Orleans. But we know off the field for you, you're here on behalf of Sleep Number, partnering with the NFL and the American Cancer Society here for the NFL's Crucial Catch program. I know you recently had a chance to go and make a visit to a hospital locally there in New Orleans. Why is this so important to you? What does this process mean to you?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously I lost my little sister to cancer about a little over a year ago. So, you know, just being a family member of somebody who is going through this and seeing how, you know, just awful this disease is, and having somebody like Sleep Number who does an amazing job of continuing to not only raise awareness, but doing everything they can in order to try to stop this disease. You know, they started the Defender tool that, you know, you can find on NFL.com that kind of helps early detection through a little test. So, I think just doing everything we can in order to just raise awareness and you know, obviously one day try to stop this disease. And Sleep Number's done an amazing job of just continuing to do that.
Well, it's impressive that, and obviously it was such a tragic event with your sister, but you have this platform to be able to try and reach people, and it's one of the great things. Obviously, being a star in college and then on into the NFL as well, is to use that platform for good.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, it's incredible work, Brian. We really appreciate your time and continuing to elevate this conversation and use your platform to try and help this change. Best of luck with the rest of the season here, man. Good luck with everything. And hopefully we'll talk to you after you get the full run of all the food tour in the city so you can give us the career highlights. All right.
You got it. I'll get back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Jesse Cofield. We're going to finish this up the way we always do with this, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to finish the day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review. Leave us that 5-star rating and check us out live on DraftKings YouTube, DraftKingsNetwork.com, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, and a bunch of other places, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. And if you missed any of our great guests like New Orleans Saints rookie D tackle Bryan Bresee, you can check it all out there and available wherever you get your podcasts. Dad, let's get to this. My God, we build this as 2 super teams. It might be one really good team and one true super team because the Las Vegas Aces have taken a commanding 2-0 lead in the WNBA Finals right now against the New York Liberty. No team in the best-of-5 WNBA playoff series has ever come back from a 2-0 hole. 2-0 teams are a perfect 17-0 all-time. And, Dad, this coming after a tendency breaker in its own right. The New York Liberty had been an undefeated 19-0 coming off losses so far this season and instead get dropped like a bad habit last night. This one was never really close. The Aces look every bit as dominant as we have expected and look poised to be the first WNBA team to repeat since 2001 in the league. I believe that was the Los Angeles Sparks back then.
What they were up 17-2 in the beginning of the game. And you always think, okay, you start out like that, you know, the team's going to come back and make it close. They win at 104-76. The one thing I'll say is that they faced each other 5 times in the regular season, 4 in the regular season and once in the Commissioner Cup's final. And in the 4 regular season games, the home team won and were blowouts. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to say this one's over yet. As you mentioned, it's never happened in the finals to come back being down 2-0. But the Liberty now go home, and they have done well at home against the Aces in the regular season. So let's see. You know, we build this as the 2 super teams getting together, and if the Aces close this thing out, really if they win it anyway, but if they sweep it, I mean, they have shown they are obviously the dominant super team. But that's what I'm going to hang my hat on to make this a series is the Liberty have beaten the Aces when the Liberty were in New York. So I just wish these were more competitive games because they even weren't in the regular season and they haven't been now in the postseason. So I would like to see some more competitive games because I don't have a horse in this race.
If you wanted to see high-powered offense, though, the Aces became the first team in WNBA history to shoot 50% from the field and 40% from 3 in back-to-back games.
Yeah.
That is just an unholy tear for Becky Hammond's squad that looks like they're going to go out here and get this thing done again. Again, no team in the 5-game series version of the WNBA playoffs has ever come back from down 2-0 in this series. So we'll wait and see if Sabrina Ionescu and company over in the New York, Brianna Stewart, can try and become the first here, Dad. It's a great sell from an experienced broadcaster that's used to trying to get people back in to watch something that they might not otherwise watch.
Yep.
Speaking of stuff that we all want to watch, though, it's been a little while since we re-upped in the International Bank of Bigfoot. And Jesse, manna from heaven rained down from the sky yesterday as we got a little bit of classic grainy Bigfoot footage to go over.
Yeah, so a couple, Shannon and Stetson Parker, were riding on a popular train through Colorado when they spotted a bizarre figure moving through the mountains. And I know Senior hasn't seen this yet, so let's just play the video so he can get a look at what we're talking about.
It's an elusive creature. All right, just squat it down. Yeah, let me see your camera. I'll do it.
So you can hear the guy in the background being like, it's an elusive creature.
Yeah, so, which is the exact kind of, like, honestly, lines like that make me think this whole thing is a sham because that's the kind of line that a bad script writer would write. And thankfully, the writers are no longer on strike now, and we're going to have that hell behind us. But, Dad, I want to believe, let's put it this way. I believe a Bigfoot-like creature exists. That being said, it feels like every time they come up, it's always this found. In a day and age where I can watch an iPhone camera on some of the newer models, zoom in like 35 times and take some of the most crystal clear images known to man, the fact that you had a whole train full of people in 2023 with these kind of phones, and that's the best footage that we got of a Bigfoot outside, I'm sorry, you're going to have to come a little bit better than that for me.
I mean, we got a much clearer image of Will Ferrell and Elf, did we not? Of kind of a Bigfoot look.
Yes.
I'm with you. I want to believe there's a Bigfoot out there. But it's getting harder and harder to believe. And I agree with you. In the modern technology of today, can't there be better shots of that? But I do want to believe it. I so want to. And you think with tracking devices and the way we can maybe do things today, we'd be better at maybe tracking and finding, because we'd see shows out there looking for Bigfoot and all that and nothing. So this is either one doesn't exist or it's the greatest creature at hiding from the public there ever has been.
Yeah, and a lot of people online are alleging, that this was possibly staged by the train company for publicity.
Would make sense.
Yeah.
Would make an overwhelming, because I mean, honestly, that or Bigfoot has incredible hip flexibility. You saw him basically hit a full squat. Honestly, I thought he was going to poop behind that bush, and I thought we were invading Bigfoot's privacy. Dad, you and I have a friend of ours who had a similar squat situation in a similar type of terrain when we were on vacation in Africa. Just walked out into the middle of the field, and then all of a sudden drops out of nowhere and just starts pooping himself. So that's what I thought was at play here for Bigfoot potentially, and it felt kind of rude. It's like when a dog makes eye contact with you and they're going to the bathroom. They're doing it because they need to know you have their back. It's a safety thing. Yeah. And here, instead, Bigfoot has people gawking at him while he's trying to do his business out here. It's rude.
I'm vulnerable in this position. Please make sure you're protecting me. I think the only way we're going to find out if there's a Bigfoot is when we finally build condos in an area where there's a Bigfoot and we disturb that area, and he has to go somewhere else.
I mean, it seems like we would have gotten to that point already.
I know.
It's not like the ocean. Like the ocean's this terrifying place full of unknown creatures at depths we couldn't pop. Anytime they say remind me that we know more about outer space than we do about the bottom of the ocean, I'm terrified by what our planet is capable of. But we should have found Bigfoot by now.
That's the thing. I know there are aliens out there. I mean, I know there are extraterrestrials. There is no way we're the only living organisms in the universe is out there. But it's getting harder and harder to believe there's an actual Bigfoot out there because too many of the stories get debunked.
Or a lineage of Bigfoots, because I think the actual Bigfoot from the grainy picture, unless their lifespan's crazy, is probably dead, rest in power. But up there with Harambe right now, looking down on the rest of us here, gone but not forgotten. Jesse, let's get to the third. This only feels relevant because it now sheds a very different light on one of the premier internet events in the last decade. The slap heard around the world at the Oscars now apparently looks very different in hindsight because of some news yesterday about Will and Jada Pinkett Smith.
Yeah, so Jada Pinkett Smith has a book coming out. So she's doing the rounds, doing the interviews and stuff. She dropped an absolute nuclear bomb saying that she and Will Smith have been separated for 6 years. And she made it very clear they have been living separate lives, living separately, which I don't know if that means separate homes or like separate wings of the house. But
I think it is separate homes.
Yeah, separate homes. So she said it's not a divorce on paper, but it's basic. She was like, yeah, we're basically divorced. Like that's how separated they are. They're not even, they're not trying to work on their marriage. They're not like 6 years ago, they were just like, we're separating. We're like basically done with each other. We're gonna live in separate houses and have separate lives. But they've kept up this whole fake facade for Hollywood, attending events and stuff. It just makes you realize that Hollywood is a sham, and so much of this stuff is like PR related, and it's gross, honestly.
What they do in their personal lives is their business. They're a family, they've got kids, all that stuff. But why would you slap Chris Rock then?
Yeah, I know the answer to this. Like, I know the answer to this. Apparently, there's rumors out there that Chris Rock knew they were separated and asked Jada Pinkett Smith out sometime over the course of the 6 years.
Well, I mean, this makes a lot more sense now.
They're separated, isn't that fair game then?
Exactly.
I mean, is he supposed to ask Will Smith, "Hey, you're separated. Do you mind if I, make a phone call there or whatever?" This is information I don't care about. I don't care about them. I don't care about Will. I don't care about Jada. I don't care about any of them. Live your lives.
It makes you appreciate true love like the kind Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce have. If you love us, download, subscribe, rate, review. Enjoy Thursday Night Football. We'll talk to you tomorrow.